You have to admire the ABC's commitment to climate alarmism. As you know, it seeps through every program, every platform, and nary is there any room for another point of view or a dose of reality.
Antarctic ice is melting fast. Parts of the planet are on fire and heat records are being smashed around the world.
First up, to some bad news for the planet. Scientists are now pretty confident that this month will be the hottest in recorded history. In fact, the UN says that we're no longer facing global warming, but something worse.
In fact, the groupthink at Auntie is so entrenched and they're so keen to keep the fear-mongering going that they're happy to recycle their own former staff and bring them back to restoke the fires. You see, perhaps when they were on the ABC books, they felt the need to temper their views a bit. But when they leave to do other things, then come back on as guests, they have no trouble at all showing their true colours. Here's former ABC host Adam Spencer on Q&A last night.
The thing that struck me was, remember 3 years ago, those iconic images of the Harbour Bridge, you couldn't see it for the smoke. Yeah. And that shocked the world. A few months ago, we saw those American cities that you couldn't see for the wildfire smoke. And you just sort of went, yeah, I guess so. What's happening in Hawaii is tragic, but no one's surprised. When you've just had the hottest day, a series of the hottest days, the hottest week and the hottest month ever measured, you can't pretend to be surprised.
Well, he's right up to a point, isn't he? Nobody should be surprised by bushfires in summer. They are terrible, they're deadly, and in bad conditions, of course, they're unstoppable. But Spencer pretends this is new. He claims to be a maths nerd, yet he studiously avoids the records that show how common fires are, especially in Australia, and how in this country we've often had worse bushfires. And even how his claim about heavy smoke is just another example of smoke hazes recorded before global warming was a thing. They were so bad in the past that ships couldn't find the Sydney Heads because of smoke from relentless bushfires. But true to form, the ABC wallowed in doom and gloom.
So just thinking about how can I make sure that I win the next election, I have to care about those people who want to keep using their cars, want to keep consuming so much more, who want their standard of living to go up. Those big decisions just aren't being made when they need to be made. And that, I'm afraid, could be the end of us. That inability to think, to act long term, I think could be, what destroys us.
Destroys us, hey? Yeah, fancy people wanting to get around in cars. Fancying them wanting to lift their standard of living to, our standard of living. But hang on again, then I thought they told us that renewable energy was cheaper and it was reliable and it's going to create a jobs bonanza, a green revolution. These zealots need to get their story straight. Because in that same program then, we heard from another former ABC type, the former boss, no less. He was invited back, lest they ever engage with an alternative viewpoint.
As you think of what's happened in Hawaii, you think of what's happened in the United States, and you anticipate this Australian summer to come. Because, we've had so much rain, there's been so much growth, and now it's drying out very quickly. And you look at the heat that's been there in the Northern Hemisphere, it just feels terribly ominous. And again, I think there's a sense of, the sense that you can see and feel disaster coming.
Yeah, it's the feel, it's the vibe. It sure is easier than the science and the records, I guess. And I don't know about you, but I find it particularly odious the way these people always predict global warming-driven bushfires, knowing, of course, that bushfires will happen, as they do every summer. But they lay the groundwork like this, every spring they do it, so that when the inevitable happens, they claim it's vindication of climate catastrophe. It's so cynical and so transparent. As if switching the world to zero emissions tomorrow would ever save us from horrific bushfires. One of the few doses of reality I saw on that program last night came from the chief scientist who wants more action.
We have to do it at the rate that we're not used to. It's hard to get your head around the scale. I think a previous chief scientist said that we've got to cover the area of Tasmania 5 times with solar panels if we're going to get, as an indicative amount, if we're going to get the amount of renewables in place. That's a lot of solar panels.
Wow, that sounds like a beautiful thing to do to the environment, doesn't it? To produce a few hours of electricity each day that we currently can't store anyway. But at least she's being upfront about how difficult this is. Then again, though, what about the cost and the impracticality? Try actually the impossibility of doing this. No one asks about that at the ABC. As you know, this renewables plus storage transformation is already undermining our economy, and it's getting worse, and it can't do the job they're saying it will do. It simply cannot power the country with affordable or reliable energy. Otherwise, every nation would be doing this, and perhaps one of them would have done it by now, but none of them can. No one, though, will burst the bubble at the ABC with a dose of facts or reality. They'll just keep recycling the same old views.